Great, thank you so much. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Amanda Cooley, and I'm representing Kennebec Savings Bank as the 2021 Women's Leader Luncheon sponsor, and would like to welcome everyone to this month's virtual network luncheon. Before I introduce today's speaker, the Chamber would like to invite you all to attend their next event on March 17th by Zoom, and that is with Senator Angus King for an update and Q&A from Washington, and also the next virtual business hours on March 24th at 4 o'clock by Zoom. And a final and friendly reminder that you can also still purchase tickets for the Kenny Awards right up until March 24th for the virtual event on March 26th at 7 p.m. I hope you will all join us. I am sure it is going to be a great time. So today's speaker is Courtney Yeager from the United Way of Kennebec Valley, and she is speaking on leading a nonprofit through a pandemic. Courtney Yeager is the Executive Director of the United Way of Kennebec Valley and directs a $1.7 million annual campaign building strong relationships with donors and local businesses to help more than 24,000 local people each year. Prior to moving into the Executive Director role, Courtney spent 3 years as the United Way's Director of Resource Development and Marketing. In her time with the organization, United Way has increased its revenue by 23%, and the number of people they serve by 25%. Courtney holds a bachelor's degree in English from Colby College, Go Mules, and has a master's degree in policy planning and management from the University of Southern Maine. So without further ado, here's Courtney to take the lead.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate the introduction. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you all, even though it's virtually. There's just so many friendly faces on this call, so I'm happy to share more about what we've been up to. And honestly, a lot of you have been involved in what we've been up to, so this might not be news to a lot of you. So I'm going to split my time a little bit today. After talking to Kayla, she suggested that I share more about how I got into this role as the first female executive director of United Way, and then talk about leading our organization through the pandemic. So first, how did I end up here? And I have to reluctantly disclose that I am from away. As you can imagine, I don't go shouting that from the rooftops very often. But it is important to my story and who I am and how I landed here. So I'll start there and just try to forgive me that one minor detail. So I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio with my parents, and I have 3 younger sisters. We didn't have a lot, but we had a ton of love and support for one another. And in our house, we valued reading and education. And my parents and my grandmother always told us we could be whatever we wanted to be. And they didn't really care what that was. They weren't like trying to force us in any direction. They said, you know, follow your heart. And I was also brought up Catholic. And one of the sacraments is the process of confirmation, which if anyone has been through that, you know, there are a lot of volunteer hours that are part of that process. And I mention that because this was my first foray into the world of nonprofit organizations at probably age 12, 13 or so. And to get my volunteer hours, I would do things like sort Christmas gifts for the Salvation Army, collect food for local food pantries, and I also got introduced to the Cincinnati Soup Kitchen. And I didn't go with family or friends, but my parents would drop me off on Saturdays. And I remember this being really the first time I was exposed to poverty on such a widespread scale. And it cut me really deeply. I was really overwhelmed by the amount of need in downtown Cincinnati that people had. And I could see firsthand what a difference a small group of volunteers could make. And I wanted to know, who else is helping these people who clearly have so much need? Where do they live? Where are they getting their health care? Who's taking care of these people? And I didn't have all the answers at age 13, but I was really determined to learn more. And in the back of my mind, I kind of thought, surely there has to be an entire well-oiled machine of a system in place, right? We know that's not exactly true, but that is where my passion for the nonprofit world began, and it only grew from there. I did stay involved in high school with Key Club and local charities, When I got to college in Maine, I joined the youth mentoring program at Colby and spent time volunteering throughout Waterville at a variety of organizations. And when I graduated from school, I had an English degree and a minor in creative writing and no idea what was next for me. My whole life, my family, and then even my liberal arts education said, oh, you can be whatever you want to be. And then the future finally arrives and you say, oh no, what do I want to be? So like many graduates, I would have taken anything for my first job. And the day that I graduated, I found out I landed a position at the Maine Department of Education as a writer and a web content manager. So, funny story, the day after I graduated, I had no car, I had no real confirmed place to live. And my dad, who was there for graduation, dropped me off at the Cross Building in Augusta before making the 15-hour drive back to Ohio for my first day of work. And actually, the commissioner's assistant at the time, she dropped me off at Central Maine Motors in Waterville, and I bought a car on my way home. So that was my first jumping into the world of work in Maine. But I was just so grateful to have a job and I'd be able to focus on educating kids, which is something I was super passionate about. It wasn't nonprofits quite yet, but it was government. So I felt like I was halfway there. And after spending a few years at the state, which really enabled me to travel all across Maine with a commissioner and really learn the state of Maine in a way that I had never learned my home state, I was ready to move into the nonprofit world. So I began as a public relations and fundraising manager for crisis and counseling centers, which is one of United Way's partner programs. I became incredibly invested in supporting mental health needs, substance use disorder needs. I started coordinating fundraising events like a 5K, dessert festival that was all new for crisis and counseling centers at the time. And I learned that I really liked raising money and asking people for money, and that is rare. So if you have that particular interest, looking at you, Amanda Cooley, it is something to seize because not everybody is like that, and there is a need out there for sure. And it's not because I like to bug people, but because I really love to have a chance to go up to somebody who is a potential donor and say, listen to what a difference you can make. I really feel like we're giving people an opportunity when we're giving them a chance to donate to whatever cause it might be. And I really wanted to find a job where I could do that full time. But I also cared a lot about different causes throughout the community. I was really interested in nutrition and physical fitness and adult literacy and diversity initiatives. And it was getting harder for me to put all of my energy into mental health and all of my energy into substance use disorder when I knew that there were just so many needs and I could possibly have a broader impact in a different way. So then, before I even considered leaving Crisis, which was actually a job I really loved, I got a call from Rob Gordon, who was the executive director of United Way at the time. And at Crisis, like I said, we were a United Way partner program. So I had experience writing grants to United Way. And I served on United Way's resource development committee at the time. And I couldn't imagine why Rob Gordon was calling me. I was 99% sure he was going to pull our organization's funding. So I went into our meeting, just like my head hung low, wondering what we could have possibly done wrong. And we met for lunch, and he told me about a position that was opening at United Way and would I be interested in applying. And the primary purpose of that job would be building relationships with local people and businesses and increasing the amount of money that United Way was raising for local nonprofits, because that's what we do here. I came on board United Way in 2016 as the resource development and marketing director. And I just fell totally in love with the job and the work here and the people here. I grew up, and even still today, sometimes I always think, who are those people who love their jobs? It's work, like that's so strange. And now I'm 100% one of those people who just loves their jobs and loves coming into work every day and working with this incredible community. And many of you know Rob on this call, and he had been in the executive director role since 1986. And he was and still is a key player in this community. And he got right to work introducing me to all of the businesses and leaders that I would need to know. He opened truly every door for me. And within my first 4 years here, we had increased our total campaign dollars by about 23%, which was not the norm. A lot of United Ways, you probably read in the paper, are trending in the opposite direction. And the best part was that none of our expenses were increasing. We're still an incredibly lean organization. So that meant that 50 nonprofit programs that we funded were getting more and more money to serve local people. So really, we were doing exactly what I had hoped we would do. Then in 2019, Rob announced his plans to retire after 33 years. And to be really honest with you guys, I had never set out to be an executive director as a little girl. Probably no one does. Even when I was at crisis and counseling, I could not see that for myself, but I had set out to try to make a big difference in some way. And I felt like this was a really unique opportunity to do so, to do something for the community that I loved. And I had always worked in the Kennebec Valley region. And I think I saw the executive director role for what it was, which was a chance to help dozens of nonprofits in a really big way. So in August 2019, the board of directors, some of whom are here today, hired me for the executive director position, and our momentum really continued. We had another record-breaking campaign year. I hired Michelle Boyer, who's here today, as our fabulous resource development and marketing director, and we revamped some of our processes. And then 6 months later, after I moved into this role, the pandemic hit. So it was like, welcome to your new job, deal with the crisis. And probably some of you on this call were in similar situations. So I'm just going to pause here, even though I know a lot of you on this call, just to provide some more context around United Way's work. I want you to understand how we typically operate in a normal year when we don't have a disaster going on. So our mission at United Way is to unite people and resources to improve lives in our community. And we're part of United Way Worldwide, which is obviously a global organization. There are about 1,100 United Ways in the country, and there are 9 United Ways in Maine. But I think it's important to note that 100% of dollars stay local right here to Kennebec Valley. We serve 20 Southern Kennebec County towns, basically as far north as Sydney. We have a fantastic board. I'm literally so lucky to work with them every day. Because we have a small team, we rely on our board a lot to amplify our work and our voices. We're probably best known for our fundraising. We have several investment areas, including education and health and financial stability. And we fund, like I said, 50 nonprofits like Meals on Wheels, Literacy Volunteers, Red Cross, Kennebec Behavioral Health, Capital Area New Mainers. I could go on and on. Many of you guys are here today. We raise, like Amanda said, about $1.6 million for the community annually. And in a typical year, we serve about 25,000 people. And in the past 6 years, when we really look back at our data, we know that our campaign has grown about 27%, which is super exciting. And like I said, that money is all, like, the community is benefiting from that. It's not like salaries are being increased. Like, that's not what's going on here. It's really like we can see how much more money is being poured out into the community. We partner with about 130 local businesses. Many businesses provide a corporate gift. Most of them have some sort of workplace campaign where people can donate through easy payroll deduction and just kind of set it and forget it. People make a commitment in the fall and then they pay out throughout the next year. So you can see why we might have had some challenges when coronavirus hit. And then in the spring, which is actually what's happening right now, we convene a group of about 30 volunteers who lead our allocations process. And that's when we give all the money out. It's the most exciting, fun part of United Way, I think, when you get to see the smiles on these programs' faces. So moving on to the pandemic. So here we are, it's March, right? We actually completed our fall 2019 campaign at the end of January of 2020. And we had a finale event at Central Maine Power. The Schumann family from Charlie's Motor Mall was chairing our campaign, and we announced the largest amount we had ever raised at that time. And we were all like feeling great. January 30th, what could be wrong? So fast forward about a month, and the whole world is just absolutely in a panic. I remember having a board meeting on, I think it was March 13th, and the board telling me, like, whenever you feel like we need to move to remote work, like, let's just do it. And so that following Monday, the staff came in to pack up. We were out of the office by noontime. And I know that we all on this call had challenges during those first few weeks and months. I don't know one business or nonprofit that would say, yep, like we were 100% ready for this, no problem. But step one for me was protecting my team and protecting myself because you just can't take care of others unless you take care of yourselves 100%. And in our case, we knew that United Way could have a major role to play in taking care of other nonprofits in the crisis. So our organization has been in this community for about 65 years, and we've always been called on in times of disaster. So during the ice storm of 98, for example, the infamous, the state of Maine asked our United Way to administer disaster funds statewide. And more recently, we've established 2 fire funds with the cities of Gardner and Augusta to raise money in the aftermath of large scale fires. And nationally, obviously, we don't deal with these issues here, but United Ways frequently launch hurricane funds or wildfire funds, whatever might need to happen. And I would say across our network, we are no stranger to stepping up during disasters. So that was always in the back of my mind. But first, we had to get staff safe and working remotely. So that was on a Monday. And then I think it was Tuesday, probably if I had to guess at like 7:05 in the morning, because you probably all remember that during the pandemic, there was no sense of time. Sometimes you would get a call at 9 p.m. or like Saturday afternoon with someone needing something. So it's 7:05, and I get a call from Andrew Silsby, the president of Kennebec Savings Bank, on my cell phone. And he just says, Courtney, what is United Way doing about pandemic response? Whatever it is, KSB will make the first $10,000 gift. So my second takeaway is really to assess the situation and help however you best can. In our case, we went right to our strength at United Way, which is fundraising. And we know how to raise money, and our nonprofits, for sure, we're going to need money to get through this. So Michelle and I worked essentially around the clock for about 24 hours to prepare to launch the Kennebec Valley COVID-19 Response Fund, which was intended to support nonprofit organizations that didn't have to be any way affiliated with us. It could just be any nonprofit that was serving people in this region. And we reached out to our board to pitch the idea and establish some parameters. Then we had to prepare marketing content, email blasts, social media, texting to give, because that's a thing, separate bank account. So we had to create an application form for our nonprofits so they could actually apply for funding and figure out how we were going to make those funding decisions. It was a full-on frenzy, just to level with you. And there was so much at stake for nonprofits. It's unbelievable. I mean, I know there was a lot at stake for all of us, don't get me wrong. But most of the agencies we fund help families maintain financial stability. And that was about to get rocked at its core. And if these nonprofits couldn't serve the public or didn't have the funding to change their service delivery method, people were not going to have what they needed to get through this. And we didn't know how long it was going to be either. That was obviously the other piece of this. So we set up a fund so that any nonprofit serving Kennebec Valley people could apply for funding. A large group of board members would review applications on a bi-weekly rolling basis because we wanted to deliver relief as fast as we possibly could. We announced it to the public and our existing donors, and that was really it. We didn't push. We didn't actively fundraise like we typically would. We knew this was, in a lot of ways, a delicate situation, and every person and every business had their own financial challenges that they may be facing. So we couldn't assume anything. I think that was a big learning curve for us. And I don't know exactly what my expectations were, but the COVID response fund just blew everything out of the water for us. From March until June, we raised $247,000 for short and long-term COVID response. We approved 72 requests for assistance, again, all from nonprofits, and organizations were allowed to apply more than once as their needs changed. And in the end, we ended up funding a total of 42 nonprofit organizations, which in turn helped 24,226 people. And that was just for COVID response. So in a typical year, we already are helping about 25,000 people through United Way. When you add this additional 24,000, we're now helping about 2/3 of the entire Kennebec Valley population. And many of those people had never needed help before. So we funded things like the Augusta Food Bank had a kids pack program to make sure kids had weekend meals, personal protective equipment for the Children's Center and crisis and counseling, iPads for the YMCA after school program, some air purifiers. Everything just had to be tied in some way to COVID, whether that be trying to continue your services or try to get people exactly what they need to feel healthy. That was at the core of what we were doing on a very regular basis throughout the pandemic. And I have to tell you, this would not have been possible without the collaboration that we saw in this community on such a major scale. In addition to Kennebec Savings Bank's seed money for this fund, we had other businesses like G&E Roofing, Central Maine Power, Kennebec Technologies, Anthem, Harvard Pilgrim, Gagnon Dental. Like, my phone was really ringing off the hook, and people were calling and saying, my business wants to participate. What do I do? A lot of them said they wanted to be anonymous. We had a bunch of foundations and clubs and everyday people like you and me reaching out. And we also got a $50,000 anonymous donation from someone who had never donated to United Way before. The majority of donations were from people who hadn't given to us before when we really looked at the data after the fact. We also hosted a statewide telethon with New Center Maine and all 9 United Ways in Maine. CMP was a big sponsor of that. That raised over $600,000 in one day that we divided among all 9 United Ways in Maine. And I remember I took calls that day, and not only were calls ringing off the hook so much that our cell phones would just automatically hang up on people because the volume was too much. But not just that, but almost every person who called said, I am so grateful to have a way to make a difference. Thank you for hosting the telethon. I mean, when does that ever happen, right? Like, thanks for giving me a way to make a difference because I didn't know what to do. And, we also received a lot of $1,200 gifts, which are indicative of the relief money that we all got across the country. So people really wanted to pitch in, and that's par for the course in Kennebec Valley, in my experience. People do want to make a difference, and this really exemplified that through this crisis. And there were definitely dark days, for sure, especially at the beginning, and there continue to be dark days. But when I look back, my heart is absolutely full with the love and gratitude that the community demonstrated. I mean, everybody really did come together. So raising money, like I said, is a big part of what we do here at United Way, and that was a very logical place for us to start. But then the next thing we did was really step into our role as a convener and a collaborator. So we are very fortunate at United Way to fund most of the health and human service organizations in our region. We find ourselves in a very unique position because of that to pull everybody together. And we knew as soon as the fund was launched that we had to reach out to our 50 nonprofits. We had to tell them that, yes, we were there to support them with funding, but beyond that, we were there to support and guide them however they needed. Not that we at all had all the answers, not even close, but we did have the network in place. So we started there. We began hosting bi-weekly Zoom calls for all of our nonprofits. This was a space for them to share challenges and funding shortfalls and look for volunteers, find ideas for collaboration. And looking back, I think that was probably one of the most valuable things we did in those early days, because at the heart of nonprofits, there usually isn't a product, so to speak. There's only people. People and their knowledge are our biggest assets. And I just have to take like 1 second to tell you about some of the incredible collaborations that came out of these calls. Like, talk about being blown away by all the good that's happening in this community. We had food banks that were getting just pounds and pounds and pounds of split peas from Good Shepherd Food Bank down south. And who wants split peas? I mean, maybe some of you on this call, perhaps, but like for the most part, like families don't know what to do with hard split peas. So Snow Pond Center for the Arts stepped up and said, we've got a kitchen, we've got some space, we can make split pea soup and we'll deliver it to programs in the community. And that's actually what happened. Like we used to joke in the office, like, oh, split pea soup, but like truly, these are the things that happen during a pandemic, right? The Southern Kennebec Child Development Corporation, they reached out to us for some funding to help feed some of their families over the weekends. They had been buying food at Hannaford, which for those of us who have done anything with food pantries, we know that's not the most effective way to spend food money. So they got a partnership going with Augusta Food Bank that's still continuing to this day. And they've got, I think, like something like 20 families are now enrolled at Augusta Food Bank to get food on a regular basis. And it was cross-sector, like it wasn't just nonprofit to nonprofit. We had direct lines of communication between United Way and the City of Augusta's General Assistance Program, tackling heating needs and things like that. Meals on Wheels stored meals at North Center Food Service for a while because they were worried they were going to have to shut down, and they wanted to make sure they had enough food to continue sustaining local seniors. And we also sought free PPE for nonprofit organizations and established a partnership randomly with the Kittery Naval Shipyard. They provided thousands of masks and face shields for United Ways, and we in turn gave those to our partner programs, especially those on the front line. And probably the last thing that we had to do in those early days was really look at our structure and look at what we were trying to do and be realistic with ourselves, because everybody was stretched thin for sure. We're a fundraising organization. In the fall is when everybody makes commitments to us and they pay all throughout the next year. So in March, we were almost to the end of our allocations process where we divvy up the funding, and we were about to announce to our programs how much money they were going to get. And I called my board and I just said, I'm a little concerned. I just don't know if all this money is going to come in. We knew a lot of nonprofits and businesses were experiencing layoffs or furloughing their employees because they had no other choice. And that would impact the amount of money that ended up coming in United Way's doors. And to us, the most responsible thing felt like saying to our partner programs, we're going to have to hold back a little bit of your funding. This is how much we want to give you. And right now we're going to commit to 75% of that. And we are going to monitor this every single week and get back to you in September and tell you if we can give you the other 25%. And that was a hard conversation to have. That was a hard email to write because that's not how we usually do business. But in hindsight, I think it was the best thing to do, because the last thing you want to do is tell a nonprofit, hey, you're getting this money, and actually you're not getting it. And it's the end of your year and now you're stuck. So we made that decision with our board leadership, and honestly, the nonprofit programs, they, for the most part, were just so appreciative that we were honest with them. And they actually got a lot of emails back saying, thank you. We know you guys are doing your best. Like, we'll see what happens. We just appreciate the honesty. So being realistic was definitely key. And I think it benefited all of us. And the good news out of that story is that we were able to reach out because our community is so amazing and our businesses are fantastic. All that worry was for naught. And in September, we got to reach back out to all of our programs and say, you're getting 100% of your funding because everybody is making good on what they promised. So that was just such a heartwarming day when we got to really let our partner programs know that. So what did I learn from the pandemic, and what can I summarize for all of you that might be kind of little tidbits of helpfulness? So I would say, like I said, take care of yourself and your team first. You won't be of use to anybody else if you're not around or if you're not at the top of your game. And I think self-care is a big part of that. I would say show up is the second one. Say yes to meetings and committees and like random invites that you get at least once. You never know what you'll learn or who you will meet. 6 months ago, I had never worked with the Kennebec Valley Council of Governments before. And I got a call at like 3 p.m. from this guy. And he just said, oh, I have this committee I'm working on. Could you join us? And I was like, I have no relationship with you. But I said yes. And next thing you know, we have this incredible relationship with KVCOG. And now their staff sit on 2 of my committees. And that's because one person heard what we were up to and picked up the phone and invited us. So saying yes and showing up is a big part of it, especially when the community's in crisis. Stay connected and collaborate as much as humanly possible. We continue to have monthly check-ins with our 50 nonprofits. Any of them are welcome to join. Together, we're working on reducing the duplication of services, and we're recruiting more volunteers, and we make sure that people can find shelter. And it's not random, it's not happenstance that those things are occurring. It's purposely building these channels and networks that focus on better serving our community. The fourth takeaway, which was a big one for me, is to just have confidence to tackle the big issues. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't. And I especially want to highlight this for all the women in the audience, particularly as we celebrated International Women's Day on Monday. Don't let yourself be silenced. One of the biggest needs that we saw at United Way several months ago, so in early fall, I just felt like we heard so much. There was a big impending housing cliff. Back in the fall, the eviction moratorium that was set by the federal government was set to expire at the end of the year. And we at United Way were getting multiple calls a week from people desperate for rental relief. And newsflash to everyone, like nonprofits had no money left. Like there was no way to help these people, and government didn't really either. So we went to the city of Augusta and we established the Affordable Housing Task Force, and that led to a lot more collaboration. But when we were trying to get that off the ground, I did hear some feedback that, this wasn't going to work. We tried working on housing before as a community. This is just another committee. It's not going to go anywhere. And I just didn't listen. I knew that our community needed this, and now we've got 37 people meeting monthly and 3 subgroups creating resources that have already been produced, that are already out in the community, and making sure that people have access to better, safe, affordable housing. And in fact, the Boston Fed just granted our task force $25,000 for a design grant to fix the system. So we're not just putting Band-Aids on things, and to develop our plans further. And that's just a very long-winded way of saying, don't back down from the difficult stuff ever. Somebody has got to do it. And the last thing I would say is use your voice, advocate for the issues that you care about. It's honestly so easy to connect with our senators and our representatives in Congress, and the chamber makes it easy too. I know I signed up for the 17th with Senator King, and that's one of the things I've learned in this role. Our representatives, they really care. And at United Way, we signed on to at least a dozen different letters facilitated by United Way or Maine Association of Nonprofits to support the CARES Act and associated bills. And there was a lot of nonprofit relief in those bills. One of the things was the $300 non-itemizer charitable deduction, which we first got approved for 2020, and then it's now been extended through 2021. We got the VITA cash program fully funded and made permanent at $30 million. We got a look back provision for some of the earned income tax credit and child tax credit, which meant that people who were low income workers or families, it enabled them to, if they had lost their jobs or faced reduced wages, they could use their 2019 income to get a larger refund on their 2020 taxes. So these are real things that happened because nonprofits banded together and said, wait a minute, we've got to have more relief for nonprofits. So that would be one of my encouragements for all of us today, is just make sure you feel connected to your representatives. And just to wrap this up, what's next? How do we all get back to normal, so to speak? And from where I'm sitting, there's obviously no going back to what we had before. And that's okay. That's really okay. This pandemic has forced us to grow personally and for our businesses to evolve. And it's been tough, but we've learned. And we know Zoom is probably here to stay, though hopefully not for fun networking events like this in the future. Working remotely is going to be a lot more common. And hopefully we've all learned to hug our kids a little bit tighter, and not just because they're always there, right? Just because you want to. And I think as we look ahead, we know that this won't be the only major crisis or disaster that most of us face in our working lives. So with that, I'm going to say a few quick tips and tricks to help us all plan for the next emergency, whatever that looks like, right? Like, downtown Augusta flooded one time, right? So like, you never know when these things are going to happen. So I've got 5 things. So the first one is to build your networks now. In disaster planning, they call non-emergency time blue skies. So create your blue sky alliances and friendships with other businesses and nonprofits and government entities, right? There's 3 sectors and we all have to work together. And the pandemic was such a great example of that. Get your business continuity plan in order or create one and then update it annually. Because, how many of us didn't have those or didn't have them updated in March 2020, right? So the best time to create a disaster or a crisis plan is when you've just been through a crisis, because this is what I didn't do, this is what I should have done, and these are all the steps we had to follow. This is a good time, 3, to review your policies for remote work, safety protocols, other issues that the pandemic brought to the forefront. This is really the time to do that. And I know I already said it, but just reach out to your state representatives, identify who their staff members are that make the most sense for your work. And there's no reason to wait, like do this tomorrow. There's nothing stopping you. Like just introduce yourself, share which nonprofit or business you represent, and then tell them how much you appreciated getting PPP funding, or tell them how your business made it through because of some element of the CARES Act. Build that rapport now. And then when there's something that you need to have a voice on, you've already started that relationship. And the last thing is to challenge ourselves professionally and personally to always strive to be better and do better. We have to continue to evolve, all of us in our organization, so that we don't become irrelevant. That has never been more prevalent than it is right now. When we stop to think, okay, is this this is the way it's always been done, but does it have to be done this way? Is there some way we can be doing this better? And as community leaders, we can inspire that behavior in others with our teams and with our colleagues. And collectively, that's how we slowly but surely will make the Kennebec Valley a better place to live, work, play, and stay, as we say here. And of course, it's overwhelming when you're trying to change the world alone, right? But when you have and you make an effort to foster local partnerships and participate in regional efforts and build statewide connections, just imagine, right? Like you're already doing that by being here today. And lastly, which I feel like I've said lastly about 15 times at this point, but I'm gonna keep going. I would not be a fundraiser if I didn't ask you to continue being thoughtful and generous towards nonprofit organizations. Donate to the causes that you care most about. Nonprofits do need volunteers, yes, but they also need money to keep doing their work. And I feel very fortunate to make a career out of connecting those who want to give with those who need it most. And my job, I think at its core, is to help people activate the part of themselves that wants to leave the world a better place. And I think that's something we can probably all get behind. I always say that United Way is only as strong as the company we keep. And I know that we're surrounded by the best people with the biggest hearts in the Kennebec Valley. And that is especially true to me today in having this time with all of you. So thank you so much for listening in. And I am happy to take any questions that you have. And you can definitely just unmute yourself and chime right in, or you can use the chat box, and Amanda's gonna keep me on my toes here.
Yes, I'm ready.
Hi, it's Christine. Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Court.
Hi, Christine.
I just want to say this. Everyone on this call, including myself, we're all people who we kind of have to bring it every day to work in our attitude and being cheerful. And this just happened the day before yesterday. If I need something to pick me up, I call Kelly Toja or Michelle, or once in a while Courtney. Or the other day I saw the email, and I'm not involved in the home eating oil thing, but I saw the email, and it's just such a relief. Oh, the United Way is handling it. I mean, because there's such a bombardment right now of so many negative things and things to worry about in the community. So you guys you're better than Prozac or any of that stuff. I love United Way, and I just wanted to say hi. Thank you for all you guys are doing.
Well, thank you, Christine. If all my questions are that easy, I think I'll just sail right to 1 o'clock. Christine, we love you too. And Snow Pond is such a tremendous partner in everything that we do, as I've mentioned you several times on this presentation already.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now. Oh, I've got one.
Oh, okay.
So it says, Courtney, what is the United Way of Kennebec Valley doing to keep young people engaged? And that's from Chris Boynick.
Thanks, Chris. So we have an Emerging Leaders Society, which we established probably in 2017, I want to say, which was a way for younger professionals, but honestly, we have no age limits. There's no restrictions. We have people really from all decades of life as part of this group. It's a way for them to make a difference and to really feel like they can contribute not only financially to the causes they care about, but also their time. So it's kind of a compilation of giving through a donation, but then also volunteering a certain amount of hours per year. And this year, we've actually been really working closely with the Chamber and Synergy to focus on ways we can collaborate more and work together. And we've had so far 2 very successful events. And I think we've got some planned for either bi-monthly or quarterly moving forward. Kayla and Michelle have been working really closely on that. And Kayla was just filling me in, like the numbers are pretty through the roof. Like it's really increased participation on both of our sides. So if you are interested in getting involved in a deeper way with United Way, especially on the volunteer side of things, this is a great way and opportunity to do that.
Awesome. I've got 2 questions in the chat here. First, Courtney, people seem overwhelmed with digital fatigue at this point in the pandemic. How are you keeping your fundraising efforts alive and healthy in this circumstance? And this is from Elizabeth Dupree.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Great question. I know we are all sick of Zoom, and the digital fatigue is certainly real, especially when there's like a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like we are hoping to maybe have some events at the end of the year that we can bring people back together in a safe way. So in terms of keeping our fundraising efforts alive and healthy, we did some very different things in 2020. Usually we have, and many of you know, kickoff of breakfast at the Civic Center, which has been in place since probably 1955, if I had to guess. So it was weird not doing it that way this year. And I was really excited. We were able to develop a great partnership with the City of Augusta, the Civic Center, and they just said, hey, come use our parking lot for free. And we decided to do a drive-in movie night. And actually, Chris Boynick was super helpful in getting that conversation started and getting that event off the ground. We had probably between 80 and 100 people at our first drive-in movie night. And we hope to do that again this year in some capacity. But that was a way for us to take our typical event, not put it on Zoom, and move it outside. And we had food trucks. I mean, I think next year it'll grow and grow, but it was a great way to just get people out of the house, even if they're just waving at each other from their cars, right? So we did try to be creative, and then we did still have several Zoom events. As much as I hate to say it, it's the world we live in, right? So we tried to make our donors and our businesses feel special in advance of that by dropping off boxes. Michelle conducted a fabulous wrap-up event at the end of January this year, and I think it went really well. There were a lot of whoopie pies involved, so who can complain about that, right?
Great. Okay, and there's another question in the chat here, 2 more actually, from Carrie Arsenal. How does a nonprofit apply to be a partner agency with the United Way of Kennebec Valley?
Great question, Carrie. So we support health and human service nonprofits. There really has to be that kind of human element to it. So the way that this process works is that in the fall, we open up a letter of interest for any organization that wants to apply for membership. We have a set number of allocations volunteers who review that letter of interest, and it's pretty brief. We really just want to know, what's your nonprofit about? What would you be looking to have us fund? And then we invite anyone who qualifies, so to speak, or who we choose to kind of move forward in that process to submit a full application. and that is due on February 1st every year. And this year we actually had 3 new programs apply for funding, which is really exciting. So we're in that process right now. And I think it's important to note, and I didn't say this, I don't think, in my presentation, but it's actually like it is volunteers who are making these decisions. And we have about 30 who are working with us right now to review these applications and make those funding decisions. And they are tough conversations to have because everybody's doing great work, right? Like that's not the question. It's, how much money do we have and what are the needs and how do we spread that around? But any nonprofit, as long as you're a 501c3 or have a 501c3 fiscal sponsor, you're welcome to apply for membership in a year. You just have to be serving people who live in our 20-town catchment area.
Perfect. Okay, we have another one from Nicole Evans. In addition to continuing to support the United Way of Kennebec Valley, what can we collectively do in the next 6 months to help your efforts?
Thank you, Nicole. Well, as the Red Cross, you guys are doing a great job already supporting our efforts. And really a lot of you on this call are doing so much to help us in our work. In the next 6 months, we will be starting our next campaign season, which is going to be chaired by Andrew Silsby, which we're really excited about because this is, Chris Voynick was actually our campaign chair last year, and we had another record-breaking campaign season in spite of the pandemic, right? So that means more and more money out to those nonprofits. And Andrew's gonna have to top Chris Voynick's work, so that's gonna be a challenge, but I think he's probably up for it. So that's gonna be a big thing, is just getting ourselves back to whatever this new normal looks like and trying to get back to some of these events that we're known for, but also revamp. And I think, especially from the nonprofit world, just continuing to show up for us like we feel like we've been showing up for everybody. I think the more collaboration, the better. So anything that we can do to support anyone on this call, business or nonprofit, like that's what we're here to do. We want to make everybody's life a little bit easier, especially this year. So we will keep you posted, Nicole, on ways that you and the broader community can help. And Susan,
Awesome.
I think I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I was just typing it in, Courtney. I remember you from DOE.
Yes.
When you worked there. And I'm so proud of your advancement to this leadership position in our community. I too am the executive director of a nonprofit that has been greatly challenged by the pandemic. And I'm really happy that I attended today because you've given me the idea that perhaps we could apply to be one of your nonprofit groups. So thank you so much, and best of luck with your position.
Well, thank you, Susan. And I'm not lying when I say, like, we want to fund as many nonprofits as we possibly can in this region. We cover such a small area. There's a United Way in Bangor that covers 5 counties. So like, I'm glad I'm not them, because that would be impossible, right? Like, I wake up with like a manageable weight load every day, right? So that's definitely something we always look at, is how can we continue to expand the help that we're giving in the community. And when I first got here, we were helping, I think our numbers were like 19,000 people a year. So the fact that that's increased to 25,000, like that's really indicative of how much the campaign has grown and the dollars have grown. And it really translates to people helped. Any
Awesome.
other questions?
I have a question, actually. So looking into this new year, do you feel that the nonprofits going into this year, as you know, we think things are going to get better, but we're not quite sure, are they still struggling with their fundraisers? Have some of them been able to get on their feet? I guess I'm thinking about it from KSB's perspective of how can we be the most help as an organization. Last year, we pivoted our Catalyst grant program to be, instead of capacity building, it was COVID relief. Do you think that kind of funding for COVID relief is still important, or would capacity building, I guess, be a better fit this year as we are kind of hopefully coming out of this?
Yeah, great question, Nicole. And I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. What we are seeing, especially in the funding applications, because now we have about half of our programs apply annually. It's kind of a 2-year funding application. And I would say nonprofits are either doing great, business kind of as usual, or they are wiped out and their staff has had COVID and they've had to be closed down for 6 months. Like, it varies, and we are trying to kind of help and support on like a case by case basis to see how United Way dollars can be the most effective for them to get back to that normal. So I would say from where I sit, it's a little bit of both. And it's not the easiest answer probably, or the best answer, but the COVID relief, we have pretty much exhausted our COVID relief funds as of the end of 2020, but we really wanted to make it last as long as we could, and we actively tried to not spend it all at once. We wanted to see, what are the needs nonprofits are going to have later, and the biggest needs that came up in October, November, December is, okay, now we're trying to get back to normal. We need technology upgrades to do that. So we funded iPads at the YMCA. We funded iPads or some sort of technology at literacy volunteers, so they could continue helping the people that they're trying to help. So I would say a lot of nonprofits have already made those upgrades, but a lot of them are just now catching up and are realizing, like, okay, now I can go back to work, but still it's not at full capacity. And to be full capacity, we need those tech improvements. So that's a big thing. And we're seeing that in our applications for this funding cycle too, is that that's a bigger need this year. So great question.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody else? Miss anything? Okay, great. I guess if there's nothing else, we can close this up. So just a reminder, those that complete the survey after this meeting will go into a drawing to win a gift card to the Liberal Cup. So keep an eye out in your email for that, and that'll be sent to you after this session is done. And you have until the end of tomorrow to complete the survey for your chance to win. So thank you everybody so much for joining us, and thank you to Courtney for a fantastic presentation. I know I got a lot out of it, and I hope everybody else did as well. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks everybody, I really appreciate it.